Have you ever just stopped and really truly asked yourself, who am I? It sounds like such a simple question, right? But it might just be the most profound one we can ever ask. In this explainer, we're going to dive deep into that question, guided by the timeless wisdom of the sage Ramana Maharshi. We'll use his method to look for the very source of our own identity.
So, where do we start? Well, we start with something universal, the fear of death. The idea here is that this fear isn't some kind of flaw. It's actually a catalyst. It's the very thing that pushes us to search for something real, something permanent that doesn't just end. That search for refuge, that's where our whole investigation really kicks off.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that primal fear of death. Then we'll start to question everything we take for granted, the world, our mind, even the very I we think we are. From there, we'll look at the specific method for this investigation and finally see where this whole journey leads.
Okay, Section 1. The fear of death. Let's think of this less as just an emotion and more like a philosophical launchpad. The core idea is that our deep-seated anxiety about just ceasing to exist, that's exactly what forces us to look for a truer, more permanent reality. It's the engine for the whole quest.
You know, the logic here is incredibly direct. If you believe I am this body, then yeah, of course you're going to fear death. It's inevitable, because bodies are temporary. But what if that core belief, that fundamental identification, is just a mistake? What if the I you've always thought you were isn't the real you at all? The path to becoming deathless, then, isn't about gaining something new. It's about realizing you were never the mortal thing you thought you were to begin with.
All right, so if we want to find out what we truly are, we have to start by questioning what we think is real. And the most obvious fundamental thing to start with is the world itself. Let me ask you a question that sounds simple, but it really stops you in your tracks. Has anyone ever experienced the world without a body? I mean, really think about that. Every single thing you perceive, every sight, every sound, every sensation, it's all filtered through your physical senses. Take away that instrument, and what proof do you have that an external world is even there? All of a sudden, reality seems completely tied to our physical form. Okay, now let's take it one level deeper. The senses might collect all the raw data, but it's the mind that turns all that noise into what we call the world. Without a mind to process and interpret the signals, does our world even exist? This line of questioning leads to a really radical idea. Maybe the world doesn't exist independently out there. Maybe it's entirely dependent on the mind that perceives it.
So this is the conclusion we're led to. The world, as we experience it, isn't some solid, objective thing out there. It's a phenomenon that happens in here. It's a construct, a story that the mind weaves together from all that sensory input. And if that's true, well, that changes everything. It means our search for reality has to shift. We have to stop looking at the world and start looking at the mind that's creating it.
Right. So if the world is a projection of the mind, what about the I that's aware of both the world and the mind? This is where we tend to make a really basic mistake. And there's a classic story that illustrates it perfectly.
The story is super simple. 10 friends cross a river. When they get to the other side, one of them wants to make sure everyone made it safely, so he counts his friends. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9, and he panics. Someone's missing. So another friend tries, and he gets the same result, 9. They all start crying, convinced their friend is drowned, completely missing the simple fact that the person doing the counting never once thought to count himself.
And that is just the perfect analogy for our own search for the self. We're always looking out there, at the world, at our thoughts, our feelings, trying to find some ultimate truth. We look at everything except the one who's actually doing the looking. Just like that 10th man, the self isn't lost or missing. It's right here, just being overlooked. We've forgotten to count the counter.
So, the big question is, how do we fix this? How do we finally count the counter? Well, this brings us to the actual practical method at the very heart of this teaching, self-enquiry.
So what exactly is self-inquiry? This isn't just, aimless daydreaming or repeating positive affirmations. It's described as a really sharp, focused investigation. The whole point is to take that root feeling of I, that feeling that's behind every single thought you have, and trace it all the way back to its absolute source, deep within your own being.
I just love this metaphor. It's not a passive thing, it's an active dive. Imagine you dropped your keys into a deep well. You wouldn't just stand at the top thinking about them. No, you'd hold your breath, focus your mind completely, and dive straight down to get them. That's the kind of intense,
one-pointed, inward focus that this inquiry is all about.
And here's a really crucial point. This practice isn't about just repeating, who am I, like a mantra. That would just add another thought on top of everything else. The question is just a tool. It's a tool you use to reverse the flow of your attention. Instead of attention always flowing out toward the world, the goal is to make it turn 180 degrees and flow back in, to find the very source that it's coming from.
And this brings us right back to where we started, to our final section, the deathless state. What actually happens when you successfully make that dive and find the source of the I? This is where we finally connect back to that initial fear of death.
The result of this inquiry is a complete flip, a total inversion of how you see reality. In our normal, everyday view, the I feels like this small, separate thing trapped inside a body, looking out at a huge, solid world. But from the realized view, that perspective gets turned completely inside out. You realize that the true I, the self, is actually the limitless, formless reality itself, and the body and the world are just temporary appearances happening within it.
So here's the bottom line. This inquiry doesn't create something new. It gets rid of something that's false. When that personal, limited sense of I, what we call the ego, is traced back to its source, it just dissolves because it never had any real substance to begin with. And what's left over? What was always there? The underlying, changeless, deathless reality. And since that is what you truly are, the fear of death just becomes meaningless.
And so we're going to end this journey not with an answer, but with the very tool of the investigation itself. This isn't just some philosophical question for a debate club. According to this teaching, it's a doorway. It's a question to be lived, to be explored directly, right inside the laboratory of your own being. Whence does this I emerge?